Hi, my name is Jessie, and this is my testimony.
So where are you from?
I was born here, and when I turned 5, I moved to New York for a year and then to Ohio. And when I was 11, I moved back here to California, Los Angeles, California. So when I was in 9th grade, I experienced like my first real trauma. My grandfather passed away in our house Christmas Eve from a heart attack, and I was there to witness it, and I had to help my mom try to like revive him and stuff. And that really set me into a deep depression. I was trying to keep it together, but also my mom had just lost her mom, so my grandma, the year before, and she took the loss of her parents really hard, and she went into a deep depression, and she was like threatening to kill herself. And so I kind of adopted that parent role, and I was trying to like make sure she didn't hurt herself. I like would feel her pulse while she was sleeping. Like she'd be drinking wine and mixing it with Xanax, and that's kind of when I started to really feel like I needed to like escape, my circumstances and how I felt. And I started to experiment with weed on the weekends with my friends. And, I never really liked weed, but I continued to do it every time, which to me shows that I definitely had some addictive personality back then, starting to emerge. Moved on to alcohol and, just kind of like normal high school partying, nothing too crazy, but I still never felt like I could get out of myself enough. I wanted to go deeper into like dissociation. So I started to go to raves on the weekend, and that was where I really found what I was looking for. I found like community. I found just freedom to like express myself, and I really was able to just like let go fully and like be transported to like another world. And I would be doing like ecstasy and like just doing things that you shouldn't be doing at that age. I started acting out in different ways. I got tattooed very young at 15. I was getting pierced. I was very promiscuous. Just anything to get me outside of myself, to make me feel like I was like bending the rules. I always wanted to like push everything to the limit. I'm still that way now, but I use it in like a positive way. And but I always had this like innate like drive to like explore and adventure. And at that time, it was very much revolved around darkness and the underworld. So I continued to do that. And, you can only do that for so long without getting caught when you're living with your parents. And my mom found out about all of that, and I got grounded, and, I thought my life was over. And then I was able to continue doing what I was doing, but like just under the radar. I got really good at hiding it even more, living that double life. And then it kind of grew out of the rave scene. And then I just started to do like a lot of cocaine. I graduated high school and went straight to university. So everyone from like looking like from the outside in was like, oh, she's doing well, like she's at a good school and pursuing her career and her future and all that. I was still like very much in the club scene at this point. Now I was only 18, but I had like a fake ID. And so I was going out and drinking like with older people on the weekends at the bars and the clubs. And somehow during that time, I got introduced to like Oxycontin. And I don't know why I tried it, like, cause that I feel like that's a pretty big jump from like Coke to like doing opiates, but it just emerged in my life. And I found like this dirty doctor who would give me like 300 Roxys a month. He would give me Somas, he would give me Adderall, Xanax, Valium, and then like Suboxone too, in case I just wanted to detox myself off of the Roxys and stuff. So that is when I really got deeply into my addiction. I was also I would sell the pills. I had more than enough to like have and sell. So I got, acquainted to how much you can, like the fast money, like that became an addiction too, like quick money for not doing much, So I did that, and I ended up going to Rome to study abroad for a month, and that's when I left my pills behind, because I was like, this is getting out of hand. I need to focus on my school, and I don't want to have this stuff with me. Let me just leave this behind. So that's when I went through like a cold turkey detox for the first time. I didn't know what was happening, and I had to try to soothe myself by like drinking alcohol, which really only made it worse. And then, that insanity of the addiction started to creep in. I'm like, I need to feel better. Like, I tried to go to the hospital and get like codeine. I was trying all these different things. I ended up like flying back and forth to Canada that month 3 times because I was like dating this guy long distance that lived there. And like, looking back now, I'm like, okay, I was going to see my boyfriend, but also they still had like the Oxycontin 80s out there. So, I was really like, everything was fueled around my using. Like, that came first, and I was in a beautiful country that I'd never been to before, and all I could focus on was like, when can I get to Canada next to get more pills? I ended up coming back here after that month in Rome, and my parents noticed that there was something wrong. Finally, I kept it under the radar for a while, but then they realized something was wrong, and I went to rehab for the first time. That was in 2009. I completed 30 days and then thought I was cured, and then I went out to drink because drinking was never my problem, which to this day I truly believe like that drinking was not my main. I know, okay, so there's like a lot of confusion about this, but like for me, alcohol never like was my vice. Like, I think that like I could drink if I wanted to, not alcoholically. But the reason why I don't is because when I've tried that in the past, it always led me back to using. I feel like it opens up that portal. It starts that phenomena of craving again. And so, at the time I didn't have that knowledge, and I just wanted to be normal. I didn't want to like be completely sober, So I drank, and then, started to use Roxy's again, and ended up doing heroin after that. I had heard about it in rehab, and I was like, that sounds cool. Let me try that. Let me throw my life away even more, And I was actually like in New York at the time. My mom was living back in Connecticut, and she was working in New York. So I was visiting her, and I ended up like going on this like crazy adventure. Once again, like fueled by this like obsession to get drugs. Like, I couldn't control it. I ended up finding these guys like off Craigslist that were selling Roxy's, and then when I was drunk at the time. But when I met up with them, I decided I didn't want Roxy's anymore. I wanted to try heroin, and they looked at me like I was crazy. Like, we don't know where to get that though, so you're on your own. Went to Brooklyn, found some like fake cab driver on the street. I say fake cab because I don't know. He wasn't really a taxi, but he was just like making money, like giving people rides. And he wasn't an Uber either, so I don't know what he was. But he was able to go get me. Like, he knew where heroin was, so he's like, I can take you to these streets where they're selling it outside. And then he took me to Walgreens to get needles. I had never shot up at this point, but this was what I wanted to do, And I don't think I understood the full magnitude of what I was getting myself into. I thought it was going to be like a one-time, like, let's try this out experience, The cab guy ended up getting me like a hotel room because he thought he was going to come up and like hang out. But, that ended up not happening. I immediately started to like throw up after I did the drugs. I ended up like Googling it, like how to shoot up, and like was able to do it. And this was like, looking back now, I'm like, God protecting me at that time, because the fact that I had never done like heroin, well, I probably had done it like, yeah, I had smoked it before, but it wasn't like, I never shot it, and I had never done China White, and that's like supposedly a lot stronger, So the fact that I didn't know what I was doing, and I did that at the time, and I didn't OD, like, that right there is a miracle, and I got violently ill though from it, and you think a normal person would be like, oh, this does not feel good. Like I didn't like it. Like you hear some people go, oh, I did it and it was like the best experience ever. I found home. This is where I belonged. I knew this was like what I've been looking for the whole time. That was not my experience. I actually like did not like how it made me feel. I hated it. I felt so sick. I felt so weird, but like I said, I couldn't stop. Just like with the weed, like I didn't know how to stop doing it once I started. So after that, I went back to California, full-fledged heroin addict now at this point, using IV. Meth came into the picture very quickly from an ex-boyfriend. And that was my life for the next 16 years, like shooting up goofballs. That was my thing. I was in and out of rehab over and over again. My parents would try to send me to places because every time I went to rehab out here, I'd run away. Like I knew all I had to do was pick up the phone and call someone, but come pick me up, and then they would be right there, So it was just, I wasn't in a place to be able to I didn't want to get sober, I liked living that lifestyle. I liked not having responsibilities or bills to pay or appointments to be at. I liked just being able to go where I wanted to go, hang out with whoever, and just get high. It was an adventure to me. And so I resisted any kind of treatment, but I would go because I wanted to make my parents happy. I loved my parents. I saw how much it was affecting my family. I was not in denial about it. I knew that I was not only affecting myself. So I did go to treatment many times. They had sent me to Pennsylvania. I remember I ran away from this one in 2 weeks. I was out the door. I had this whole plan set up. I took a taxi to a Greyhound, and I only had a little bit of money. And then the Greyhound took me to Boston, and then this guy I'd met one time picked me up and was like, come live with me. And we ended up using the last of my money to get some heroin, and I lived at his house for a little while. Then we got in a fight. He kicked me out, and I lived with literally 6 different people while staying out there, all strangers that I just happened to meet, was stripping at 2 clubs out there to make money, just took on this persona wherever I went to get what I needed, and when I came back to California, finally, I just kept doing the same thing over and over again. I started to work underground poker games, which I found exciting. I was able to make a lot of money like that, but then it ended up progressing into escorting. Some of these players, they didn't just want massages at the table, they wanted extra stuff, and I saw that the money was a lot more than I was already making at the game. So once again, the quick money, the drugs, the lifestyle, I became all consumed in it. And I did that for a long time too, and that is really where I started to lose a piece of myself. I just felt so ashamed. I remember my dad found out somehow that what I was doing, and it was very, very shameful, especially my dad is Persian, my mom's white, my dad's Persian. So that side is very conservative, it brought a lot of shame to my family. And so I did that though. I continued to do that. And then after a while, I just couldn't anymore. It just like I said, it was killing my soul. And I ended up getting into other ways of making money, from stupid little things like stealing receipts outside of trash cans of stores, and then stealing the items and then going back and returning them with the receipts. That was at my lowest, but at least I wasn't sleeping with someone to make money. So I would be doing that to get by. I was living out of my ex's car at this point. We were living out of Airbnbs. We were living out of motels. We lived out of U-Hauls. That was a big thing. I would get U-Hauls and live out of the back of them. Finally, I was able to find my niche, with fraud, and that's how I made a lot of money, which eventually ended up making me feel more guilt and shame than I felt when I was escorting. Because at the time when I was escorting, I was like, look, I'm not hurting other people. I'm hurting myself. This is I'm not affecting others with this. Now I'm doing something that I always looked down on. I remember I'd be like, ew, you guys are disgusting. How can you be doing this to people that don't deserve it, But eventually, like, just like every other line I said I wouldn't cross, I crossed that one too, and I did that for a long time. I made a lot of money, and I don't want to get into like the ways of how I did the stuff I did. But I did harm a lot of people, and I'm still trying to make amends for all that today in my sobriety, But eventually, just like the typical lifestyle of using and doing crime, like you get arrested. And like once I started getting arrested, it didn't stop. I got like really lucky in the beginning. Like I remember like I crashed my car, like I totaled it. I was on GHB and I was driving and I ran into like a wall. And these cops drove by right after, and they ended up like helping me instead. I don't know how they didn't know I was out of my mind. Like everything, I was living out of my car. It was a nice car. It was a Range Rover. So like maybe from the outside they like didn't know, but I had like all these needles fly forward in the car. Like I was completely out of it. I didn't have a phone that worked because I was on the Wi-Fi only plan at the time. And I remember that one of the cops let me use his phone to call my friend to come pick me up, and he walked to 7-Eleven and got me a water. And then the other cop was like helping me unload my stuff into my friend's car when he showed up. And it was just like these little like moments where I was like graced by kindness when I could have been in trouble, And another time I got caught and the cops were like, well, just call you an Uber, just throw your drugs away in that trash can, leave your car here, and like, get an Uber, and we won't get you in trouble. So I think because I escaped getting arrested for so long that like I just thought like, oh, I'm invisible and I'm invincible and I'll be fine. But like once I started to get arrested and like get put on probation and all that, like it just didn't stop. And my last experience with that was in 2019. So right before this, I had like my first spiritual like moment of clarity, but it was when I was in my addiction. I had made a lot of money at this point, and my ex and I, we were living in like a 2-bedroom apartment in Marina Del Rey by the beach. We had a brand new puppy. I had enough money to go shopping whenever I wanted, which also became like another addiction. I, was never dope sick. Like I had like everything I thought was making me miserable before, that lack. Oh, I'm homeless. I'm living out of the cars. This is why I'm not enjoying this lifestyle. No, it's because I was miserable because I was using drugs. And like I realized that finally when I had all that stuff, and I'm like, I'm still empty inside. I'm still miserable. I will never be fulfilled until I leave this life, and that was God reaching through me, even in the depth of my addiction when I was so out of it, And God protected me so many times. Like I was in gnarly situations, like held at gunpoint a couple times, like walking streets, like the streets of like the hood in like bad parts of Inglewood by myself with people following me, like just like all these different circumstances, and like I escaped it like without getting hurt, and the fact that I didn't like OD for so long, like that was God protecting me. And I had staph infections multiple times all over, from like my chin to my eyebrow to my leg, like arms. Like I've been hospitalized for staph infections, like MRSA, more times than I can count. And at one point I even was septic. I had like 104 temperature, I almost died. And that was still not enough for me to want to stop. But now I see it was God protecting me, like he was trying to give me wake up calls. Like, this is what's going to happen if you don't stop, you're going to end up dying. So anyway, so I got evicted out of that apartment in Marina, moved back to the Valley, and I knew in my heart, I was going to get arrested when I moved here, because that's what happens in the Valley. You just get in trouble. There's cops just looking to arrest you, and moved into like this trap house, and within 2 days, I kid you not, of living at this trap house, I got arrested. And I had like a bunch of stuff in my car. At this time now I had a very fast car, I had a Hellcat, and so I thought like, oh, if they try to pull me over, I'll just run and I'll make it, So I had a bunch of like evidence in my car. I got arrested outside of Walgreens and like in Arleta, and I took the cops like on a high-speed chase. And, they caught me. Long story short, there was a helicopter, there was a million cops. It was traumatizing, and I did it to myself. But like, I went to court. I was facing like 18 felony charges. I was like, oh well, just went home, kept using, And then I ended up, while I was out on bail fighting this case, in the very beginning of fighting it, I tried to get another car illegally, and I was arrested. I was set up and arrested, and from there, I went back to court, and the DA wanted me remanded. He said I was like a danger to society, that I shouldn't be out, and the judge agreed with my attorney that they would give me house arrest. And that was my first opportunity that God gave me. And I remember almost not going into court that day because I was told I was going to be remanded, and I was like, I'm not going to go and be sick and be in jail. Like, I'm just going to run. Like, I know like how to. I always just ran from everything, So instead of running, I'm going to keep bringing it back to God. Like, there was something inside of me, like a little voice, and I knew it was God. Like, now I do. But at the time, I just listened to it, and I went into court, and then look, it worked in my favor. They gave me the house arrest. If I hadn't gone in that day, I would have been on the run again, and it would have made everything so much worse. So I would put on house arrest. I go back to that house in the valley. At this point, I OD for the first time ever, which is crazy to be shooting up for that long and not OD. Sorry. But I ended up ODing. My ex saved my life. He Narcaned me, gave me CPR. He called the paramedics. He did all the things to like save me. And when I woke up and I was like laying there on this like dirty floor, and I just see my dog, and she's like hiding under the table because she's scared and she doesn't know what's happening. And I can just hear a voice on speakerphone, and my ex Chris, he's talking to this voice, and I'm like, what? I was so like out of it and disoriented, but I was like, what's happening? Like, and I just remember him saying, she's awake, and I was like, oh my God, did I just OD, and that was one of the scariest things I've ever been through. I've saved many people from overdoses, including my ex, more than once, and I always thought that was more terrifying, but to like be going through it, like, and waking up and being like, I almost didn't just wake up right now. Like, it was enough to really, shake things up for me. And 1 week later, I had a staph infection on my foot from shooting up, and I was like, this is the time. Like, I don't want to die. And I called my dad. I said, take me to the hospital. And before I could change my mind, he was there within like 30 minutes, picked me up, took me to the hospital. They gave me IV antibiotics for my foot. And while I was there, they detoxed me. And following that, we got evicted from that house. So it was like all these little things happening like back to back, which at the time I thought was, why is this happening to me? Everything that's bad is happening. But, it was God helping me. It was God pushing me the direction I needed to go. And I just couldn't see it at that time. It was blessings in disguise, as they say. And like, my mom was gracious enough to let me move in with her after I got out of the hospital. And I'm still in house arrest at this point, My ex went to rehab, and he moved in with us here. And that was a miracle in itself. This guy's been using drugs like over 20 years, and he finally got clean too, and for us to do it together, like that was like unheard of, but it's definitely possible. So I just, I really threw myself into like working AA. Like when I was on house arrest, I had like strong women like come surround me. They would come here, they would bring meetings here to me. They carried me through like that stress of the court case. They would pray over me, like literally put their hands on me and pray, and living in the fear of the unknown is a very unsettling feeling. But for some reason, I was just calm like throughout this whole time, because, I'd already been through like the worst of what I was going to go through. Everything going forward, even if that included going to prison, at least I'm clean. At least I'm alive, Mind you, I didn't want to go to prison. Like, who wants to go? But I just, it was up in the air what was going to happen. My attorney thought, oh, we're going to get you mental health diversion. We're going to get you probation. And then, we're fighting it. It's like 19 months, right? And I ended up going to court, and they're like, no, you have to take this 32 months prison time. And if you don't take it today, like we're like, because they were done pushing it out, they're like, the deal's off the table. So I was like, okay. So I signed for it, went home, was in a little bit of a state of shock. I'm like, I thought I was going to get off, but I'm not, I'm going to have to go to prison. So I just tried to stay positive and trust that this was God's plan for me. I trusted that God wanted me in prison to help other women stay sober and find their way. And I trusted that this was what was going to happen and what needed to happen, and me paying for what I've done to other people. Like, I can't get away scotch-free, and so instead of using over that, which I definitely thought about it for that day, I'm like, I should just go get high. I'm going to go to prison. Like, who cares, But I didn't, I stayed sober, and I just worked my steps in AA even harder. Like, I was just trying to do everything I could before I went in, and honestly, I feel like it was harder for my parents than it was for me, because they have all this fear, like, oh, it's going to set her back. She's going to start using again. And like, I knew I wasn't going to use though in there, like, or over it. Like, I just wanted to get onto the next chapter of my life. And when I went to court to turn myself in, I remember I had my mom and my dad, I had my ex, and I was ready, it was crazy because I had so much anxiety that morning going there. And then I get to court and I just felt like this like feeling of like, just like a warm, calm feeling. Because I kept praying, God, please not get me out of this. I prayed, God, please give me the ability to accept whatever the answer is. I want acceptance. That's what I'm praying for. And I went up to the front, and the DA was arguing back and forth with the judge, and the judge was on my side, and the judge was like, we're going to give her credit for house arrest. And the DA is like, well, no, it doesn't equal up this. She'll still have to go to jail today. And they just kept going back and forth. And I just remember being up there just like calm, like just like almost like an out of body experience. Like, okay. And I could hear my mom crying in the background, very like, she was like sobbing, and like finally the judge was like, no, we're going to give her the credits, and it equals to this, which equaled over time served. And the DA was like, I submit, Your Honor. She just stopped. And then I really hear my mom like lose control, because she was just like this relief over her. And like my dad gave me like a little God wink when I looked back, and I just was in so much gratitude, but almost felt like undeserving of it, like here I am lucky again, like, and people could say that, oh, you got off lucky again, you always get off so easy. But I feel like because I was willing to go, and I was willing to stay sober, and I was willing to do God's work, like God helped me that day, and he saw that I was more of use out here than I would have been in there. And I think that's the only thing that saved me. Because they didn't have to give me those credits. That was the thing that my attorney was trying to explain to me, that if there was like a fine line, like it didn't have to apply to my situation. And the fact that it did, like thank you, God,
So what advice would you give anyone dealing with addiction or struggles right now?
My biggest advice would be to not give up, no matter how hard it is. The cravings will go away. Like for me, that was the biggest part, like waking up and having this battle inside, like just trusting that will go away and believing it, like having faith over fear. That's my mantra all the time, faith over fear, because you can't see either one, right? So choose faith. Why are you going to live in fear? And really just like surrounding yourself with the winners, like surround yourself with people that have more time than you. They may not have the life that looks exactly like what you want, like, but they know how to stay sober. They were successful in recovery. They have something to teach you. So staying teachable, following direction, that's huge for me. Like, you don't know everything. That's what I had to realize. Like, I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew better. I didn't think anyone could teach me anything. And I learned something new from other people every day. Find a sponsor in AA, work the steps. Like, don't just go to meetings. The true like change, transformation, spiritual connection comes from the steps and working with another alcoholic. And then eventually you sponsor people, saying yes to opportunities that present themselves. Don't shrink, don't be in fear. Like, opportunities will present. When you say yes, more doors will open, and it'll just keep leading you to other things. That's how people like make it in life. Like it spirals from like following direction in a positive way. But it's also like making sure you're choosing the right path, the right opportunities. You know, you don't want to base them off of like greed or self-centeredness. Like you want to do stuff that can help you be of service to others, something you're passionate about. Just really like finding who you are again, re-identifying who you are again. Because when I got sober, at least I had to let go of who I was before, that girl that liked poker games and escorting and fraud. Like I had to let go of all of that. I had to let go of the kind of men I was attracted to, the kind of people I wanted to surround myself with. It was reinventing who I was and finding a connection with a higher power. May that be like religious or spiritual, just something bigger than you, you know?